Hello, and welcome to Conquering Finale. My name is Neo, and this is the measure number matrix. Now, measure numbers in Finale are a bit complex. They're incredibly flexible, and probably at the end of the day, a little bit over-engineered, in my opinion. But that's why this sort of has its own category. Although it is part of the measure tool, measure numbers, it is a little bit more encompassing that, and it is sort of a huge piece of the measure tool. So that's why I sort of set this up as its own category. Now, the main repository for the measure number information is the measure number region dialog box, which we can access from the measure tool using the measure menu. We have this option, edit measure number regions, and that pulls up this box, the measure number region dialog box. We can also access that dialog box without even going into the measure tool because it also exists in the document menu almost towards the end here, edit measure number regions, and this is the exact same box. So in order to manipulate these regions, you don't even need to be in the measure tool. And just FYI, this dialog box is so important to me that I've actually programmed a shortcut for Keyboard Maestro that will pull it up immediately. And it's a force of habit for me to do this, so bear with me. But there is no native shortcut for this window, unfortunately. You're certainly welcome to program a shortcut in Keyboard Maestro or something, or another program, but you'll see me doing this a lot, and you may be wondering why you can't do that, and that's why. All right, so sorry about that, but let's start talking about this measure number region dialog box. So, what is a measure number region? That is the $10,000 question in Finale because it is sort of complex until you sort of understand what's going on. So, in this dialog box, this is sort of divided in half or in two sections. The top portion of it, going from the top all the way down to the about here, the starting number. All of this stuff deals with the definition of the measure number region. In other words, like which measures get which measure numbers, how they're numbered, how or lettered, and all of that stuff. Everything below this point, from these two tabs where it says score and linked parts, everything below this has to do with the position of the measure numbers within in the staff and everything. So there's sort of two halves to this, although it's not actually half of the window. You get the idea. And they sort of function independently of each other. It doesn't matter what you set for the definition of the regions; these positions will apply to these regions. And every single, you'll see, I'll start to add new regions, and you'll get another line here that says region 2, measure such and such, display as such and such. Every single region can have its own set of, first of all, definitions, but also its own set of positionings if you so desire. Now, when you use these buttons on the right, delete, add, and sort, obviously if you have one selected and delete it, this will go away and you'll be left with an empty box. And as we're going here, we're going to have 2 regions, 3, 4, 5, 6 regions, as many as you're going to need depending on what you're doing with your measure numbers. We can delete those, select one and delete it, or we can add one. And just FYI, when you add a region, it will always copy the settings from whichever region you have selected. So in this case, I have this first one selected, and I choose add. It's actually duplicating this region and creating region 2. And actually, as of right now, every single aspect of this region is exactly the same as this one until I start making changes. All right. So now that I've got that second one there, of course, you can delete it. And the sort button is just sort of a useful thing. Sometimes you'll start creating these regions and they'll get out of order. And it's just handy to kind of press the sort button and they all go sort of in chronological order, which is helpful just to sort through it. So let's talk about the concept of the measure number region. Exactly what is going on here? Well, if you read this line, it says region 1, measure 1 through 99999, display as 1 through 99999. So in Finale speak, every single measure gets an absolute measure number, like an actual measure number. So, the first measure of the piece is measure 1. The second measure of the piece is measure 2. The third measure of the piece is measure 3, and so forth. You can't actually change those absolute numbers. It's just math, really. But these regions allow us to display any selection of those measures as however we want. And the way that we do this is that the region has a includes measure 1 through 9999 in this case. These numbers here are the absolute measure number. So again, this is the first measure of the piece through the 9,999th measure of the piece. But then what we have here is this starting number, and we can change this to anything that we want. So as it starts with the number 1, the first measure will be number 1, the second measure will be number 2. This is essentially the displayed as portion of it, right? Very simply, I can put the number 2 here, and you'll see that what you'll get is region 1 measures 1 through 9999, display as 2 through 10,000. So effectively, when I click OK, I've got my measure number set here to show on every bar, which is not set by default, but I'm just doing this to help us understand how these the region definitions work. You'll see that the first bar of the piece is now measure 2. The second bar is measure 3, measure 4, etc. So this is sort of exactly how this works. These are the absolute measures. This is how you're redefining those measures. So there's a lot of flexibility going on here, insofar as you can, let's just set up something here where I'm going to say measures 1 through 4. I want to display starting as measure 1. So you'll see it says region 1, measure 1 to 4, display as 1 to 4. Great. Now I'm going to add a second one, and I'm going to say the second set of 4 measures, which will be, in real terms, bars 5, 6, 7, and 8. So we'll include measures 5 through 8. And I can have any starting number I want. I can even have it start over at 1, or I can have it start at 2, 3, whatever number I need it to start at. And let's say I'm going to start this at measure 9. All right, so measure 5, the actual measure number 5, it will display as measure number 9, and then the 8th bar is going to display as 12. So you can see what's going on. Measures 5 to 8 display as 9 through 12. And when we click OK, this is what we get. We get measures 1, 2, 3, 4, measures 9, 10, 11, and 12, right? So this is just a kind of very quick way to create a situation where the measure numbers skip. Now you'll see what happens is that after measure 12, nothing exists, right? Because those measure number regions are absolute in their boundaries, I suppose. So whatever you choose here includes measures 5 through 8. That's all. So after measure 8, there is no region encompassing those measures. So there's no measure numbers that will get displayed on the 9th bar of the piece going forward. So if this was the only change I was going to make, I just wanted to cut out bars 5, 6, 7, and 8. What I really should do in this second region is set this to a high number, so that no matter how many measures I have in the piece, it will just keep counting continuously, right? So now I'm including measures 5 through 9999, starting at measure 9. And so now we have 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 20, etc., and onward and on forth. And if I keep adding measures up to 10,000, you'll see that the numbering will keep going. Now, what gets tricky about this, and why I'm sort of relating this to a matrix, is that eventually the math gets a little bit tricky, because now let's go back here and say we're going to do, again, measures 5 through 8 is going to be bars 9 through 12. Well, if I wanted to create another skip, so now I want to go 1 through 4, 9 through 12, 17 through the end, right? So now I have to think, okay, so the next measure number I want is bar 17, but the actual bar number that I want it to start in is bar 9, right? So I'm going to add a third region, and I'm going to say, okay, so let's do the math here. 1 to 4, 5 to 8. So this next one is bar 9, and we'll say 9999 to keep going. And I know that I want to skip 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16, so we're just going to call this starting number 17. All right, so now we've got this sort of roadmap going on where we have bars 1 to 4, 9 to 12, 17 onward, right? But again, you really have to be careful about the math here, because the actual bar numbers are 1 through 4, 5 through 8, 9 through the end, right? And so this will allow me to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 10, 11, 12, 17, 18, 19, 20, and onward, okay? So that's just sort of a primer about how this sort of works. Now, the tricky thing is that you do have to be careful, because sometimes these regions can overlap. I should say they're allowed to overlap. So, for example, in this first one, if I were to choose by mistake, if I were to say, includes measures 1 through 6, Finale will allow me to do that, but the result is going to be uh, something to be desired, because those two measures of overlap, which you see right here, is showing bars 5 and 6, but also bars 9 and 10 in the same position. So that's a bit of a problem. So you do have to be careful about overlapping your measures, or your measure regions, I should say. And obviously, the other part of this is that you can have holes in your measure number region as well. So, for example, I've got measures 1 through 4, actual measures 1 through 4. If the second one, started just bar 7 and 8, starting in bar 9, then you'll see that actually there is no measure numbers on these two measures here, and we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 9 over here. So, again, it's possible to overlap regions. It's also possible to create gaps in your regions. Now, you could do this on purpose. Sometimes it's you want to do something like this for a certain effect, but you just have to be careful that Finale will definitely allow you to do this. So you just have to know when, if, and why you're doing that. Now, as I mentioned, one thing that gets a little bit crazy is the math of this, because I've been working in this first page, and it's sort of somewhat easy to figure out the math. But, once you get farther along, actually, if I had, hundreds of measures here, this would even make more sense. If I were to decide that after bar 36, I need to go to bar 42, right? If I need another skip. So now I have to look at this and think, oh, geez, what is the actual bar number for 42? Again, this measure here is listed as bar 37, but that's not the actual bar number, right? It's because if you counted from the beginning, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, until you get to this bar. And I can tell you that this is not bar 37 because of all those numbers that we skipped, right? So there's a lot of math that goes on with this, and you can sort of work this out manually if you want, but I'm going to show you a really nifty pro tip to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into scroll view instead. And this is something that Finale added a couple versions ago, I believe, maybe in version 25. I forget exactly. But there is this sort of measure number region that runs the top, across the top in scroll view. And the great part of this is that what you can see right now is that measure 1 is 1, measure 2 is 2, 3 is 3, 4 is 4. And then you get to measure 9, and it says measure 9 in the top. So this is mirroring the measure numbers as they are displayed according to how you have them defined in the measure number regions, right? But if we go into the preferences and go into the view section, in the center here, there is an option to display defined measure numbers, which is what it's displaying currently, or display actual measure numbers. So if we switch to here and hit apply, now what you'll see is a representation of both situations. So this top line is the actual measure numbers of the piece, right? So number 6, again, this is the 6th measure of the piece. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But you can see your defined measure numbers in the score, which is measure 10. So what I'm suggesting here is that this is sort of a pro tip, because now you can go, if we were to take, we decided that bar 37, it needs to go from 36 to 42, right? So now I can look at the situation, and I know that starting in actual measure 29, that's where we want to start that new region, right? So here, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say, well, now this doesn't include 9 to the end. This will include 9 to 28. That's the last piece. That's the last bar that I want this region to go to, right? And then I can choose add, and it will duplicate that. And now I know that we can start with measure 29, the actual measure 29. And again, just 99999, go to the end and start that with 42, right? And voila, the effect is exactly what you want. You didn't have to do all that counting to figure out that this was the 29th measure of the piece. You didn't have to go back to the beginning and count all 29 measures, right? So that's a really killer tip if you're working with these types of, we call them measure maps, skipping around and stuff like that. So, use the display defined measure numbers and display actual measure numbers to your advantage. Now, a lot of times it makes more sense to display the defined measure numbers, particularly if you're in the process of writing and you need to reference a certain number. It can be annoying having both sets of those numbers here like this in scroll view. So, use that option judiciously, and you'll be very successful with that. Now, there are a couple other options in that measure number region dialog box that I want to talk about in the top section. All right. First of all, we have this thing called all views, page view only, scroll view, and studio view. This is really just exactly that. More often than not, just choose all views, but you can choose to display a certain region only in page view so that it doesn't appear in scroll view if you really want to. Or only in scroll and studio view so that you're not seeing it in page view. And if you choose this option, then these numbers within this particular region will never print on the page. So if you can use this to certain effect if you need, I don't know, maybe you need bigger measure numbers just in scroll view for some reason. You can choose to do something like that. But there's a few options here for the view in. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the style and the prefix and suffix. Now, there's several different types of numbering styles, and you can see by default the first one is checked where it's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's just indicating that the measures are numbered as numbers going, from 1 through infinity. But below that, we have options, 4 different options for letters. We have lowercase letters, uppercase letters, and there's actually 2 different versions of both the lowercase and uppercase letters. And the difference can actually be seen in the second half of this display here. With this first one, you get ABC all the way through Z, and then after Z, you get AA, BB, CC, DD, and actually if you get to ZZ, you would start getting AAA, BBB, CCC, etc. And you can have that with lowercase and uppercase letters. And then the second version of this, when you get to Z, you'd get AA, AB, AC, AD, etc., until you get to AZ, and then you'd get BA, BB, BC, etc., and onwards. And again, there's 2 different versions for lowercase or uppercase letters. I usually recommend using the second version of these, where you have the AB, AC, AD. Because if for some reason you have a lot of these, eventually you can get into things that look like, CCC, DDD, E, and the measure numbers actually start to get really long, so they're a little bit more complex. So I always actually recommend using the second pair of these if you want letters for measure numbers. There's also time and other. These are sort of complex things that we can do to show the actual time of the piece as the measures are going, and other is something completely. I mean, you talk about like over engineering. I'm going to show you this in a much later video, but I'll come back to both of these options. But more usefully, let's talk about the ABC options, and let's just choose this third one, lowercase letters ABC. And what you'll see what happens here when I change to that is that, okay, the include measure numbers 1 through 4, it's still encompassing the same actual measure numbers, the first 4 measures. The difference is that the numbering style has changed to letters. However, the starting number is still 1. So this is where you need to do a little bit of translation between numbers and letters. Obviously, A would be number 1, and you can see here display as A through D. So if I actually chose 2 here, you'll see it will display as B through E. 3 here, C through F. Unfortunately, you can't like put D here. It won't recognize that. So you do have to sort of figure out what letter gets assigned to the number. So you might have to do some counting of the alphabet. But for example, 15 would start at letter O. All right, so that's just how that works. And when you do something like this, the measure numbers will turn from numbers to letters. And I'll show you that in the score. Now we see letters A, B, C, and D, right? Let's go back here for a second. And that brings up the prefix and suffix. Now, the prefix and suffix are just that. It's just confusing about how you're supposed to use these. The prefix will put whatever you type in here before the measure number or letter. So we'll use the prefix very often to put a specific number in here, and I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. If I put the number 1, then the number 1 is going to appear in every single measure number of that region. So in this case, I've got the prefix of 1 with the style ABC starting with starting number 1, which is actually A, right? So this is going to give me bars 1 through 4 is going to display as 1A through 1D, right? Does that sort of make sense? That's the prefix. And we also have the suffix as well. So I could do something weird like put the number 1 here, but what you're going to get here is, again, this is going after the measure number, so you're going to get you're going to get A, B, C, or A1, B1, D, C1, D1, just like that, which is sort of a different type of string if you want to do that. So that's essentially what the prefix and suffix are doing. It's literally putting a prefix or suffix before whatever it is you have defined. And these prefixes and suffixes, by the way, can be just about anything. So if you wanted to write a word here, and just let's go back to numbers, right? The word word. Actually, you can add, a suffix here as well. Word. You can get some weird stuff going on, like word 1 word, word 2 word, word 3 word, right? So there's some incredible flexibility with this prefix and suffix. And let me sort of set up a situation where we can use these things a little bit more practically. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete all these and start over. So 9999, okay? So now we've got our regular situation here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this up so we go bars 1 through 4, 4A through 4D, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is the first region is really just going to be bars 1 through 4. I showed you how to do this, and you click OK. And now, again, you're only seeing bars 1 through 4. Starting at bar 5, there's nothing there. So I'm going to add a region, and I'm going to call this, this will include measures 5 through 9. And starting number 1, because I want an A here, right? So I'm going to choose the A, or the ABC style here. I'm going to choose this third one for the lowercase letters. And I'm going to choose a prefix of 4. All right, so now again, if you look up here, you'll see exactly what's going on. Measures 5 through 9 will display as 4A through 4E. And we click OK, and we've got 4A, B, C, D, and E, although I actually wanted just 4 of those. So let's go back here and make this bars 5 through 8, not 5 through 9. There we go. That will give us 4A through D. Now, the next measure number region, I want to start with measure 5, but measure 5 is actually starting in what? Measure 9. So we're going to add another one. Includes measure 9 through the end. Okay, but the starting number, we're going to go back to 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, when you add, it always duplicates the one that you selected. So it's duplicating all of these settings that I had here. So you got to reset the prefix, go back to numbers, and again, we're going to start with measure 5. So there's an interesting thing. Even though it's starting the actual measure number 9, the starting number itself is 4 less than that, so it's 5. So this is totally acceptable as well. And so now you can see how I can have a situation like this where I have bars 1, 2, 3, 4, 4A, 4B, 4C, 4D, bar 5. All right, so that's how you would do sort of an insert of 4 bars where you need the 4A. All right. Now I'm going to do something else a little bit even clever here with the suffix, if I can manage to think about this. Even for me, sometimes this is tricky business dealing with this. So what I'm going to do is I am going to make sure that this region is actually only 9, 10, 11, and 12, right? 9, 10, 11, 12. And I am going to call this one starting number 5. Nope, starting number 1, I'm going to choose the uppercase letters with a, starting number 5 with numbers. See, it's confusing for me, with a suffix of A. All right, so this is going to give me bars 5A, 6A, 7A, and 8A, just like that, right? So what you see I'm doing here is I've got a repeat here, and what I want to do is call this both 5A and 5B, 6A and 6B, 7A and 7A, 7B, and 8A, 8B, right? So we can do that. So again, I'm going to duplicate this one or add one here. Now this is actually going to overlap because I want these to encompass the same bars. So we can leave includes measure numbers alone, 9 through 12, and actually the starting number is going to be the same as well. The only difference here is the suffix. I'm going to make this suffix B. Now this will get a little bit confusing because what's going to happen is that they're going to overlap, and this is getting into a little bit of the lesson in the next video, but we can actually change the positions of these so that they are a little bit higher for both the start of the system and the every single measure, something like that. And I should get something that looks sort of like that. So now I have, 5A, 5B, 6A, 6B, 6A, 7A, etc. So now I have sort of two sets of 5, 6, 7, 8s here. And of course, we can add one more region. And actually, this time I'm going to select this one to duplicate it. And this is going to be, so let's see, 13 through the end. All right, so measures 13 through 9999, and starting number will be 9. Style numbers, and that should do the trick. There you go. All right, so that's sort of how you would set something up like that. So what you see I've got here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4A, 4B, 4C, 4D, 5A, 6A, 7A, 8A, 5B, 6B, 7B, 8B. I don't know if I would necessarily use both of these styles of numbers in the same piece, but just to sort of show you how you can do something like this. And then it goes on to bar 9, 10, 11, 12, etc. So like I said, the measure number regions is really a matrix of wild stuff here. So, hopefully what I've done to explain this top portion of it makes a lot of sense. I know I've been rambling on for a long time, but this is really tricky business, trying to figure out exactly how this works. Oh, and incidentally, I've got these out of order now, so let's see if I hit sort. Yep, nice. And just like I wanted to, it puts that that region that starts measure 13 at the bottom. So these are nice and sorted in order now. All right, so yeah, that was a lot. This is complicated, as I mentioned, and the positioning may even be even more complicated than that. So you have that to look forward to in the very next video. All right, so thanks for watching. My name is Jason, and this has been the Measure Number Matrix beginning lesson on the measure number region definitions themselves. So thanks for watching, and I will see you soon on the next video.